Well, thanks so much for the invitation today. When this war started in Ukraine, I think a lot of us from the Ukrainian community were looking for international support. And again, what United Sikhs has done, coming to a country like Ukraine and supporting us, has been tremendous. So, my family and I, we are Catholics. We're not Sikhs, obviously. But I think when it comes to interfaith dialogue in creating an interfaith community, I think it's important to cultivate your own home and then to provide hospitality. And so I want to start by saying thank you for inviting us to your home, to your community today, and making me and my family feel so welcome. I do think when we look at what is happening in Russia, or when we look at what is happening today in Armenia, or when we look at the violence that has been going on for many years and continues in Israel and Palestine, people of faith, whether we be Sikhs or we be Catholics, I think we have something in common. Pope John Paul wrote a letter at the beginning of the millennium where he said that the biggest challenge we face, and when I say we, I say humanity at large and people of faith, is the mistake of materialism. And what he said about materialism is not so much, buying fancy cars or buying fancy houses. Materialism is deeper than that. Materialism is the idea that we don't need God, that we will look to ourselves. It's sort of the idolatry of self. You could think of it that way. And indeed, I do think that when we are supporting Ukraine in this war, or when we're supporting other beleaguered countries that are facing violence and political extremism, we are making a stand against that kind of materialism, that kind of idea that man is the measure and that God doesn't matter. And I do think people of faith right now have a lot in common, and we have a common goal. And we have a common posture when we look up to the heavens for guidance as opposed to looking at our own ideas. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a neurosurgeon in New Jersey. I am Ukrainian by ethnicity. All four of my grandparents were born and grew up in Ukraine in the 1920s. And similar to what is happening in Ukraine now, they faced oppression at that time at the hands of the Soviets who had taken over Ukraine. And all four of my grandparents had very similar stories. They basically, for the crime of standing up for Ukrainian independence, they were labeled Ukrainian nationalists, and they were basically many of them faced significant oppression, were chased out of their country. And so seeing what is happening in Ukraine today, we can't help but think that this is a replaying of history. And indeed, I think this sort of violence is cyclical in this part of the world, in many parts of the world, certainly. In 2015, after the annexation of Crimea and the beginning of hostilities in eastern Ukraine in a region called Donbass, through my wife's non-for-profit Razum, we started our own project trying to see what we could do in Ukraine, something called the Copilot Project. And, I think whenever we see something like this, we all try to help in the ways that we can, the ways that we're capable of helping. And as a neurosurgeon, I wanted to work with other neurosurgeons. And so we started this project in 2015. And since then, we've been to Ukraine probably more than 20 times. I've done over 100 surgeries. And what we're excited about is that our program has grown. And in fact, in some ways, it's grown in an exponential way since the hostilities started in February of 2021. We were contacted by ENT facial plastic surgeons who recognized that because of the significant artillery attacks, there were a lot of injuries to the face among Ukrainian civilians and Ukrainian soldiers. And so we were also contacted by orthopedic surgeons. Right now, there are close to 20,000 amputees in Ukraine. And even though that is a staggering, overwhelming number, unfortunately, that number is expected to grow. So we've been contacted by orthopedic surgeons to help not only with patients who have amputees and prosthetics, but to help with limb salvage surgery where that is appropriate. We've been contacted by endovascular surgeons who have gone to frontline hospitals like Dnipro, Mechnikova Hospital in Dnipro, which is probably about 100 kilometers from the front line, to help with devastating vascular injuries. And so again, we are, as devastated as we are by this disaster in Ukraine and seeing our friends and family affected by this, we are heartened and we are encouraged by communities like United Sikhs who, whether or not they have family or friends in Ukraine, they recognize that the suffering of humanity is something that needs to be alleviated. And so they have gone there, put themselves at risk, left their families to go to a war zone. And it is hard to express the depths of our appreciation for that action. So what are the challenges that Ukraine has today? And how can United Sikhs and the World Sikh Conference play a role in that? Well, since the beginning of hostilities, something like 400 to 500 hospitals have been destroyed in Ukraine. I mentioned the number of patients with amputations, now numbering close to 20,000. There is a major problem with post-traumatic stress disorder, as you can imagine. And I can tell you on our recent trip to Ivano-Frankivsk with a team of surgeons who were doing complex facial reconstruction, you know, I encountered many of these soldiers face to face. You know, they almost don't look you in the eye. They stare at the floor. They can barely speak. They're clearly what we would once call shell-shocked or severely traumatized. And we recognize that Ukraine now is a country, unfortunately, full of people like this. Men, women, and children who have either been forcefully sent from their homes and had to live in exile, or have seen just unimaginable horrors. And so, as the medical community, specifically with our Copilot Project, we are trying to widen this network of physicians who can go to Ukraine. Now, I want to say that we do not believe in the idea of just simply providing charity without any end in sight. The goal of our project has been to try to train the trainers. In other words, to go and find leaders in neurosurgery, leaders in facial plastics and ENT surgery, leaders in these other fields, to try to provide the kind of training that they need to be able to take care of their own population, so that we can, at some point, be able to walk away from this and leave Ukraine in a situation where their healthcare professionals are able to deal with this very significant healthcare challenge. So again, we do invite any of you who have a medical background to please contact Razom, contact the group of United Sikhs who have been coming to Ukraine. We are interested in again, growing this network of orthopedic surgeons, trauma surgeons, the work that United Sikhs has been doing in terms of training first aid is extremely important, and that will continue to be important because, again, we know that the casualties, the deaths, are higher than they need to be because of lack of this kind of appropriate training. So again, I want to say again from the bottom of my heart, as a person who is religious but is not a Sikh, I'm inspired by the kindness, by the compassion, by the service that you have shown my people. And again, I believe that people of faith who turn to God for guidance have a great deal in common and have a great deal of work to do together. Thanks for your time and thanks for your attention.